Good morning, everybody. So today we're going to be learning how to make canes. So canes are coils of the polymer clay that when you slice it open, it has a design or a pattern on the inside. So we're going to look at three different ones. We're going to look at a swirl like this one here. We're going to look at one that looks more like a target. So it's got like the little center circle and then a ring and then another ring. And we're also going to look at checkerboards. So to start off with, I'm going to show you this one, how to make a swirl. So when you go to get started, I'm going to give myself a little space. Your goal is to get at least 2 colors of the polymer clay. I don't know, I think that ended up being like about 1/8 of an inch thick. So it's smaller than our normal slabs. But to do that, I'm just taking a little bit of clay and I'm using my little pencil to roll it flat, and if you go slow and carefully, you can make it really nice and even. So once you have the basic kind of slab going, then you can kind of trim it so it matches. So like this one here, I'm gonna make a blue and a yellow one. So I've started off, I already rolled out my slabs, so you don't have to watch that part. So I'm gonna layer them together. I want a little bit of the yellow to be poking out from the blue. That's gonna make this little bump in the middle. So lay them on top of each other, and then you can use your needle tool to slice off any extra from the sides, like that. And remember, always keep your extra, because this stuff doesn't dry and you can use it over and over and over again. And when you're not using your needle tool, make sure you put the little cap on so it doesn't accidentally hurt somebody. So once you have it trimmed, so the bottom one's going to be a little bit longer than the top one, you're going to use your fingers to gently but firmly get the bottom color kind of started to be rolled a little bit. And then you're going to use your fingers to kind of continue compressing and starting to make that little area roll over. So you're just going to get it started and just kind of keep rolling it up. And when you get towards the end, you don't want to have a huge thickness of this extra color. So if you just trim off and just leave a little extra, then you'll have enough to blend, but it won't end up being too thick in that one spot. So I can kind of lay this over the top, so it's just a little bit over, and then you can see that I've got my swirl started. It doesn't look finished yet, but I've got it started, and then I can use my finger or a tool if I really want to just smooth off this edge. So right now it's kind of a loose roll, and we want to make sure that it's nice and tight with no air bubbles in the middle. So once I have this outside smooth, I'm going to start on the middle and I'm going to just push it with my fingers. And then I'm going to slowly work my way towards the outside. What this is going to do is going to help compress your polymer clay together to make sure that there's no air bubbles in there. And it's also going to make it a little bit longer. And if you haven't conditioned your clay yet, like if it's still a little bit stiff, this will also help it kind of loosen up a little bit. And I'm still working on my little mat here, but you have your tin foil. I would recommend working on top of your tin foil. If your table is made out of wood and you work straight on the wood, it can leave like an oil spot on there. But if you work on top of the tin foil or something like that, then or a piece of wax paper, it won't bleed in there. Now, if you have a plastic table or like the kind with the smooth finish and stuff, that's not a wood table, a lot of times those will be fine. But just to make sure, I would use the tin foil or some wax paper. Okay, so I've compressed it. It's gotten a little bit longer, but now I want to compress it even more. So you're going to use those skills we learned in class about rolling a nice even coil. You don't have to roll it super far. You're just trying to get it nice and compressed and even. So when we do that, you can see how like the design's tightened up a little bit. And there's still a little teeny bit of gapping on the side, but not very much. Now at this point, if I slice through this Now I have this little slicer thing because I'm gonna be doing a lot of these videos, but you don't have to have this slicer to be able to do this project. You could just use some type of really thin kitchen knife. That would work fine too. Just make sure that you ask your parents first and clean it. So I'm gonna slice off the edge just so you can kind of see what it looks like so far. So now this is still really thick, so it was a little bit more difficult for me to slice through, but you can see the nice little swirl. So if I leave it like this, it'll stay, you know, pretty much this size. If I want to make it actually smaller, all I have to do is keep rolling. So like this one right here started off the same size as this one, but all I did was I kept rolling it, and then when I sliced it, it's the same pattern, just a little bit smaller. So that is how to do the swirl. So the next one that I'm gonna do is a target. So the target one is where it's got like the ball in the middle, or the, you know, circle in the middle, and then it has a color around it. So for this one, I've chosen to use these two colors. You can use whatever colors you want with these. Just make sure that you can see all the work that you're doing, see that you have a pattern. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with a little coil, and I'm gonna make sure that it's the same thickness as this little slab that I made earlier. So it doesn't really matter how thick or thin the coil is at this point. If you want a big center, then have a big coil. If you want a small center, have a small coil. But like right there looks pretty good. That's fine. It sticks out a little bit, but that's okay. Then I've also already rolled out this yellow. And unlike the other one where you need it all to be a little bit bigger, this one doesn't have to be. I'm actually gonna wrap the yellow as my middle color. So I'm gonna trim the edges to make it the same width as this, but it doesn't have to be the same length. It doesn't matter what length it is right now. So we'll just set all the extra clay off to the side. Make sure you put your little thing back on your needle tool. So now what I'm gonna do, well, I'm gonna slice this side straight too, just because it'll make it a little bit easier. So just try to make it as straight as you can. Keep all your extras. Okay, so now I've got my color that's gonna go around this little inside tube. So I'm gonna take this little coil, set it on the inside, and I'm gonna start wrapping my clay around the outside edge. Now, if you have a little bit of funky spots from when you rolled your little polymer clay slab, that's okay, just smooth it out, and it'll be fine. Now, when you roll it, kind of wiggle it a little bit, and that'll show you a line where you can trim it. You don't want to have to blend in a bunch of extra clay, so just kind of follow the line that it creates. So that way, when you roll it up, it'll match fairly nice, and you can just kind of stick it together and blend it just a little bit. So I'm just going to squeeze those together and just kind of blend it and push it a little bit with my finger. Now, just to make sure that it's nice and stuck on there, I'm gonna go ahead and do that compressing thing where I start in the middle and work my way out. I'm not trying to make it any longer at this point. I'm just trying to make sure that there's no air bubbles, and I'll do just a little teeny light roll. And like I said, if you have any of these little funky spots, just blend them out, it's fine. Okay, so now that I've done that, now I can add on my next color, which for me is gonna be the center color. So yours can be a different color. You could have 3 colors. You could make a huge one of these and have a bunch of different colors. It's kind of up to you. So again, I'm gonna roll it up. I'm gonna wiggle it to see that line where it needs to go. Always clean off your little needle tool. So I like to clean off my needle tool and my fingers when I change color with just a paper towel. So I'm gonna cut it and put my needle tool away, keep my extra, and then again, just kind of stick it together. So I've got it stuck together like this, and I can blend it and then start compressing in the very center and kind of work your way out to get rid of any air bubbles and make sure that the clay is stuck really good. And roll it just a little bit just to make sure that it's nice and even. Okay, so now if I slice this one, when I slice this one, I'm just gonna slice it right here. So you can see on this one, I get that little ring. So it's more like a, the target. So it's got that center ring and then the yellow ring and then another blue ring. Now mine, if yours smears a little bit like that, so my clay, when I work with it, it tends to, it's really warm in my house right now today, so it's getting a little mushy. If yours is doing this, just to get in the freezer for like 15 minutes, and that'll actually make it really stiff again. And once it's really stiff, you can slice it and it'll come off really clean like this one. These have just been in my house, and my house is really warm right now, so that's why it's given that little smear. But that's one way to do the target. And like I said, you can continue adding on more and more. So like if you wanted to add on another layer of yellow all the way around, you could. It's up to you. So be creative with it. Now this last one is the checkerboard one. So for the checkerboard one, I've already rolled out a couple of little slabs. Now these ones are a little bit thicker. So you can see these are about twice as thick as this one. So here's I tried to make them as fairly same as I could, because what I'm gonna be doing now is I'm gonna be layering these. So I'm just gonna take my little tool. You can use a knife, just, you know, make sure it's okay before you use it. You can also use the needle tool for this part too. So I sliced it in half, flipped it over, and now I can layer it this way. Now, if I want to, I could keep going and I could slice it again and make another layer. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm actually, instead of slicing it this way, I'm gonna slice it this way so I can stack it. Okay, so I'm gonna slice down through all of them. And the goal here is to make it as even as you can. So I'm gonna stand up so I can see over across the top of it, because I wanna try to get these as square as possible. Okay, so I made those as square as I could. So now, this is how I cut it, but if I take one side and I flip it around, and then I make this side go this way, you can see how I'm really starting to get, actually I'm gonna stick this on this side. You can see how I'm really starting to get, ooh, that checkered pattern, right? So this is the same thing. Once you get to this stage, then you can start kind of doing the compressing thing, because right now it'll kind of fall apart quite a bit if you're not careful. So you want to start in the middle again and kind of move towards the outside, flip it, and start doing some compressing and squeezing it together. So at first it might kind of, you know, make it a little bit smaller if you need to, but it'll make it smaller and longer. But this will make a really nice checkerboard pattern. So now when you slice it, it'll just be like that. So you've got your checkerboard, you've got your swirl, and then you've got your target. All right, thanks for watching.